everyone take your last sips of coffee. Get any of those well, maybe don't, because maybe don't get all those last minute coughs out, because I have started recording.
Oh.
Oh, damn it!
It might be difficult to start the episode with like a cacophony of coughs and sneezes.
I think that's a beautiful way to start, though.
It all depends on how you look at it.
There's never going to be a 3, 2, 1. It's always just.
There's never gonna be a 3, 2, 1. I told you that last episode. Hi, and welcome to Speech Bubbles, a webcomic podcast by people who make webcomics for people who like webcomics, and man, we gotta find a catchier way to say that. I'm Brent, I do the webcomic Paradise.
I'm Amber, I do the webcomic Backlash.
And I'm Jeff, and I do the webcomic Firearm with a Y.
With a Y. And this week we are talking something I think that people who aren't just webcomic artists, but also people who are a lot of artists in this, across time, but also kind of especially in this generation, setbacks and motivation is the topic on the table this week. And I wanted to ask you guys to kind of start off and to kind of jump into it. What are your personal experiences with keeping your motivation up? And are there any big setbacks either of you guys have ever experienced in producing a webcomic? Because I know Jeff's got some.
Oh, well, I guess, I'll go first. I did have a huge setback. I can talk about that. So, it was a nice day in early 2016. I was away from home, enjoying a sweet vacation on the East Coast, and I come back, and lo and behold, my Mac's not turning on, and I'm like, well, golly gee, why is it doing that? Can I turn on any other way? No. Can I maybe grab anything from it? No. All my comic shit is on it? Yes. So, guess who had to completely wipe their computer in order to get it to boot back up?
I'm gonna guess you. Yeah. Did you have any of your stuff saved to a hard drive prior to this, or was everything? Well, everything had to be on this, didn't it?
Oh, not everything, thankfully, which is also a good band. But that's not the point.
I wasn't gonna say it.
But I did have a one of those external hard drive passport things. I had a Mac one, and I had been saving things up to it because I'm like, well, that'd be a great idea. I've had computer troubles in the way past, and all I had was USBs and stuff. So I backed up a portion of my comic, but I did not think to back up all the pages I had been working on at that time. So that included, the past couple pages that were uploaded before I came back from my major hiatus, as well as 7 or 8 pages that were just inked and ready to go, as well as just my entire chapters, roughs and thumbs. Just all of it gone. None of it was saved on the hard drive because I was stupid and I didn't back it up, which I'm just going to say this right now. Back up your stuff right now. Do it right now while you're listening.
Watching Jeff go through this on Twitter was the impetus for me to start doing a weekly backup of all of my Paradise files onto a hard drive, and also any of my project folders that start getting more than 10 files big is I should maybe start backing this up in case these are things I want to use in the future.
Invest in the next hard drive.
Also one of the best things you can do is spend 70 to I think probably $70 to $100 is the range usually. Get yourself a nice
pretty good one.
Hard drive, an external hard drive, and I think you probably have to replace those every couple of years anyway. But it's a real good idea.
It is a godsend. It really was. So yeah, that pushed me back on hiatus for I don't know. It was a good part of the year. A good part of the year, the start of 2016. I think it was in maybe April. I know I took a break in April because I was like, oh, I'm gonna be away on a trip, guys. I'm just gonna, have a little quick, like 2-week hiatus. I'll be back. I promise I'll be back. I come back. I have nothing, you guys. It's all gone. And I took that entire, like most of the year off. I think until October. Yeah, until October. I decided that I wanted to try and come back by the same day I launched. And I spent a lot of that time actually. I think I've talked about this in the last stuff. I spent a lot of that time learning and improving and just kind of fixing things, as well as just redrawing everything. But that's a major one. I don't know if anyone else had a. I was gonna say,
like, in all ways, that is like a webcomic horror story. You're back. You did come back. You came back swinging. Pages are back and looking good, might I add.
Oh, well, thank you. I try.
What about you, Amber?
Oh, my problems are not nearly as bad as what Jeff went through. I'm blessed.
Okay.
But I have had definitely have my own share of computer troubles. So I work from a laptop exclusively. I don't have a desktop. I just have a big old laptop computer, and that's where everything I am is.
Mm-hmm.
And I take it with me whenever I go traveling and stuff, like on big trips, because that's how I work. I work from the computer, so I can work from anywhere. And I don't remember which trip it was. I think maybe last 2015, like the December in 2015, I went and visited my friend, and I, like an idiot, didn't take my laptop on as a carry-on, and I packed it inside of my suitcase, and it wouldn't boot up when I checked it out.
Oh no.
And it was very scary. It like blue screened. Whenever I turn it on, it would just blue screen. I was like,
oh.
And I hadn't backed up my files for a few months at that point.
Oof.
And luckily it did turn on. Like after trying, it finally was like, okay, fine, you get one chance. And so it turned on, and I immediately plug in my hard drive. I put everything on it, and then it died. And it was a real close call, but I had to wait.
It gave you one last chance.
It gave me one last chance. Like it's swan song. Take it and run, you fool. So I had to buy a new laptop, which is never fun.
Yeah.
But, it works now. I have a nice new one, and I'm never going to put it in a suitcase ever again. Don't ever put your laptop in a suitcase. Like me. Don't be me.
Yeah, keep that shit with you.
Oh my gosh. And I had I've taken like hiatuses and had like hiccups every now and then and again, like whether it's due to like illness or injury or vacations and stuff. Like they always happen. It's just you never know when.
Yeah.
Have you had any major hiccups yourself, Brent?
Nothing major. I had started Paradise at 2 pages a week, and I tried to keep it that way for a pretty good amount of time, and then I scaled it back to 1 page a week during my senior year of art school, because I had to do our final thing was we had to put together a show, and there was a project that was working on a standalone, I made a standalone comic one semester, and it was the workload was really intense senior year, so I just didn't have it in me to keep the quality of Paradise pages up that whole year. and also do 2 pages a week and do school stuff. So I did dial it back. That's not really like a huge setback. That's just like making concessions with your life.
Yeah, you were still updating.
But
though, like you were able to still update.
But after doing 2 pages a week for like a year, it did feel like suddenly having to switch to like slower motion, and webcomic time is not great. Yeah. Other than that, anything I could probably say on like motivation specifically could probably be better used in conjunction with some of these questions we've got, and that's called a segue, guys. We put out the call for questions on Twitter in relation to our episode topic, setbacks and motivation, and we got a bunch of good ones. And I guess we could just go down the line in this wonderful, wonderful spreadsheet that Jeff has put together for us. From at Creasemarks on Twitter says, how do you deal with the inevitable webcomic hiatus and retaining your readership?
Well, I can't tell you. It is inevitable. It will happen. Just be ready for it.
I think something I've kind of picked up on, if you do need to have a hiatus, or if you do need to take a break or take a week off or something, be vocal about that with your readers. Don't just disappear, because that's where people start being like, hey, what the heck? You said you were going to update twice a week. Like, if you have to miss an update, just be honest. Be like, hey, so I'm having a bad mental week. I hurt my hand. I have to visit some relatives. Like, just be honest, and people will understand.
Yeah, if you can be anything, be honest. Yeah, I would say that's like, definitely a good thing.
Be willing to communicate with your readers about like your scheduling and stuff.
Yeah, and I think giving a reason is also like a real good thing. Like, I think at least most of the people I know who also work on webcomics have like that, like there's this understanding of like, yeah, you're gonna injure yourself, like you'll probably get like wrist shit happening or what have you, or just general illness stuff. And I think a lot of times in regards to at least retaining the people you want to be reading your comic, like, because if people are gonna split, they're gonna split. But I think if you're like genuine about like, hey, this is why I just can't do the pages this week or what have you, most people will be understanding and sympathetic of that. I think what you don't, I guess the opposite would be like sporadic updates with no warning whatsoever, like 2 weeks not updating, and then like a week where you do like 3 pages, and then another month where you don't update without saying like anything. Like that sort of deal is for all intents and purposes a real good way to lose readers from my research.
People just like forget, like when it's really sporadic. I find it's not like, it's usually not like it's not usually because people are like, this person can't keep a consistent update schedule. I'm in a huff and I'm gonna leave. I refuse to read this. It's more like they'll just forget to check back, and then they'll lose it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much of like out of sight, out of mind. You know, like if you don't keep it consistently in front of people, then they're just gonna be like, well, what was that thing I was doing before?
Right.
I don't remember.
And I've always had really, like, my readers are very, very nice to me. They're very patient with me, and whenever I'm like, hey guys, so I just can't do it this week, or hey, I have to miss an update, people are like, oh, take care of yourself first, it's fine, your comic can wait. I'm like, you are all angels. So just be open to communicating with your readers about it, and they'll probably stick around. Like, if you give them a little insight into your life, you don't have to tell them your whole life story, but like if you just let them know what's going on, people are usually like, right, you're not just an internet personality, you have a life you're living, you know.
And a lot of like, I think bullet points for like starting a webcomic advice, at least that I read like maybe 2 years ago when I was starting, were like, you know, like you have to be consistent with your update schedule. Do not take any like days off or what, you will lose readers. And it's like, I don't know a single author who hasn't taken time off because of school or an injury or just like a bad mental health day. and that's I like it's gonna happen, and it's okay.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. You come first. Your comic comes second.
And if people are reading your comic and if they like your stuff, they will stick through it with you.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the readers you want to cherish.
Yeah.
All right, and I guess the next question on the list is from @PrettyFlyShyGuy, which is a great username. Is how do you keep motivation on a big project? Which we all do.
A really big project.
Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah, man.
Oh man.
I
would.
My biggest motivation is just I want to see this story through to the end. I have this really cool big project, and it's really cool, and I can see it all in my mind's eye, and I want other people to see it. I want to share it with other people, and that's my biggest motivation. Is no one else is going to make this story. No one else is going to make the story I am going to make, so I have to make it. No one else can do it.
Yeah, and I think so. I think we said some things along this line in the last episode. But remaining hype about your own idea is a pretty key in this. Is I think we all have kind of stretches of the narrative where we're just maybe not that into it, but being really excited for what it's setting up, or a new a certain character who's going to show up soon, or a plot point that's going to be revealed, or even just a really good page that you have in your queue. Be remaining excited about your own idea is a really good way to keep motivated.
Everyone's always excited for the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a really big project, you're oh man, I always no matter who is making it, I always see webcomic artists and they just are saying stuff I can't wait to get through this scene so we can get to the next one. And then once they get to the next scene, they're oh, I can't wait to get to the next scene. It's just
it's
a constant cycle.
When you're doing fight scenes, you want to be doing conversation scenes. When you're doing conversation scenes, you want to be doing fight scenes. It's yeah.
When you're inside a city, you want to be outside in the country. When you're out in the country, you want to draw some pretty buildings.
Unless you're an outlier, you never want to draw cars. Just ever.
That's why I don't ever draw cars. I'm I'm gonna draw buildings. I don't know how people get around. It's not cars.
I don't have cars in my story, Brent. What are you talking about? They don't exist.
Yeah, you get lizards and stuff.
Well, some days you just don't want to draw a giant lizard, Jeff.
Hey. Well. All right, you got.
We could probably do a whole episode on things people don't want to draw, though.
Ah, yes.
But
I actually have a suggestion for what you could do. I try and do this. I'm not going to be oh yeah, I do this every time, but it has helped me several times in the past when I have, and that's usually the first thing I do in the morning is actually I just kind of scribble something. Just anything. It doesn't even have to be super great. Just as long as I'm that's the first thing I do. And I was oh, in my mind's eye, yes, art. I know how to do art. I will do art today. And it's just that small little seed of hey, art's a thing. Art's a thing. Or it could work the same way with writing or with coloring. Just the first thing that you do is usually kind of what cements how your day's going to go, which is why a lot of people when they work out in the morning or they go take a jog or something, then they feel super great and pumped because they were active. And in the same sense, I do that also at night. So it's the first thing in the morning I think of, art. Last thing I think of before I go to sleep, art. That definitely helps with motivation, I think. Mm-hmm. Which can apply to more than just comics, but it has helped me with my comics a lot.
Yeah, set the tone for the day.
I think another thing with another little thing that I do, at least with my bigger stories and stuff, find you someone to be your confidant.
Mm-hmm.
Tell them all your spoilers. Tell them about your twists and turns and character development so that you have a hype man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like, I think most people have like one person that like they know all their secrets, and like that's the person you go to like you, and then you can show that person your like spoiler art that you have been sitting on for years, and like, and it's like kind of freeing, and it can remind you that your stuff is good and make you excited to keep working on your long project, because you're like, oh, this person's reaction to my really cool story, yeah, they're excited for it. I knew it was good. Let's go. You know?
It always helps to have that extra little, like, yeah, this is actually a pretty great idea. Just to kind of sit there and like, yes, I did it.
And it's just generally good to have someone to bounce ideas off of, so you know it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Let's see. I think that's pretty good. So then let's see, what's our next question? Oh, Sam.
from at gayaskimchi.
Oh man. What are some ways you guys have gotten back into your art groove again? And what are some tips for folks? Man, you ever seen Kiki's Delivery Service?
It's been a minute.
Yes, I have.
It's been a real long time, but
okay,
yeah.
But that movie is like, that's it. Like, that embodies it embodies like that art block feeling, where it's like you it's natural, it's something you have always done, but then you're just like, I can't get the motivation, I can't get the drive to like break out of this block. So instead of torturing yourself and forcing yourself to keep drawing and then inevitably end up hating that thing because it's not what you remember it feeling like, take a break. Go consume some new TV shows and comics and refuel your energy. Like, take a break.
That's like it's really important to like be in tune with your cycles of productivity. And it's as important as it is, it's also very difficult. I kind of know that maybe that half a week to a week's worth of days out of a month, I will probably be like absolutely useless. And I might be like 2 days into a period of this where it's just like, I spent like 6 to 8 hours kind of staring at a blank canvas on Psy and not getting like anything done. And when that happens, I know I have to take a couple days off and like binge watch a whole TV show or like read a whole thing, or kind of creatively recharge your batteries. And it's not easy, and some people's cycles of like ups and downs are really extreme. I remember a friend telling me once that they had like either been to a panel or read an interview about a guy who's like who like was like 5 years on, a year off or something ridiculous. Like, it was like, yeah, so I know like after about 5 years of working, like I have to take a year off, and it's like that's a really long time. But I mean, that guy knows how to min-max his own productivity cycles.
Yeah, you kind of just have to be in tune with that.
I think for me, I'm in the similar vein. I know that some days I'm just not going to get anything done. And I also know that sometimes I'm just not as creatively or intellectually stimulated enough. And I'm like, well, golly gee, what can I do? And I believe I have found that answer, at least for me. And that's, I actually watch documentaries, and recently I found a YouTube channel that breaks down comic terms and layouts and ways of handling certain parts of the story, like say like an action scene, or how to build up dread, and how to like handle I think there was one about like actually handling like comedy in like comics, which was pretty interesting. And I liked watching this because it helped me understand the medium I work in more, while breaking it down in like something that's less than 10 minutes. And I'm like, well, this is bite-sized, and I can learn a lot, and it actually kind of makes me think more about comics. And I like watching people work on stuff. When I see people work on art or comics, it makes me think like, wow, I want to work on art and comics because I just see someone who's like, you know, they probably aren't always going to be doing super great either, but like when you catch them on a great day and they're doing great stuff, you're just like, wow, that's inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what works for me.
Like surrounding yourself with other artists too. Get good art on your feeds, man. Get that inspiration all the time, like right in your face. Follow people who you really admire, follow work. Yeah.
I think this question kind of ties into another question further down the list from @Tizen_art. It says, what motivates you to make art/comics, even though you were in art block prior? I think that's kind of got like a similar vibe to this one. I don't know if I've ever had a real art block. Like I know people who've been like have like months where it's like they can't work on anything. I don't know if I can speak to like actual legitimate art block. I'm like kind of like, knock on wood, like a little lucky to have a brain that's a little bit like buzzing all the time with shit that it wants to get done, creatively speaking. But have either of you guys had like a real horrible art block and had to crawl out of it?
I'm kind of in one right now.
Oh.
Actually. Ever since moving last year, it's just been a really big dramatic change in my environment, and it's like taken me a really long time to get used to it. I think I'm finally getting out of this art block, like, because I'm finally like, I want to finish stuff. I want to make stuff out. Like, I was only able to draw commissions because I had to do commissions, because otherwise I would not be able to make rent every month. And then my comic pages, and those were the only like art form that I was getting anything made. Like, I wasn't drawing for myself for fun. I wasn't drawing my own characters. Like, I would draw fan art, but like that was just kind of like reflex. Like, I need to draw something and I don't want to draw my characters. I guess I'll draw fan art. And like, I just haven't had a whole lot of like, I don't know, people who have been following me for a while probably noticed that, like, where'd all the OCs go? I'm like, buddy, I have been having kind of a rough time. And I think I'm finally getting to a point where I'm like, okay, I'm used to this new situation, and I can start, like, I finally am like, it's like a light turned back on in my brain. I'm like, oh, I want to finish this and that and this and that and that and this. And nothing really, it wasn't really I guess, like, for the motivation, what motivated me to keep making my comic and like during this period was it was like a schedule. Like, it kept me sane. Like, I had something to do. I wasn't having a whole lot of fun with it, but I still felt like, okay, I accomplished this thing today. I'm done. You know, it didn't really. Yeah, it wasn't really. I haven't really had like something motivating me outside of that. Unfortunately, it just was like a big mental block, and now it's like, I took care of all my other problems, and I'm finally back into a comfortable place, and now I can focus on doing things for fun again or drawing more.
I think that's actually really interesting in that you, you were working out of necessity because you gotta eat, you gotta make rent, but you, even when you were in and still coming out of like a period of kind of like of art block, you were still working consistently, you're still drawing things consistently. I think that part is really important, to not just like,
don't just stop.
Yeah,
try to draw something every day. Even if it's just a little dumb doodle.
Yeah.
Also, make sure, if you are having like an art block feeling, go through like a mental checklist. Have I eaten today? Did I sleep last night? Have I been outside in a week? Like, just do like a mental checklist of like kind of necessities you need to live. Have I drinking anything in a while? Like, just make sure you're taking care of yourself first. You can't expect your hands to make beautiful art if your like body and mind are like starved and suffering.
Maybe consider is like, is there like a big thing kind of like looming in the near future that's like stressing me out subconsciously? I think there's like a lot of extraneous factors that like you can't just be like, oh, I can't draw, so like this sucks, I suck. Like it might be something else happening in your life, kind of like giving you extraneous like stress.
Yeah, like for me, it was moving across the country and living on my own for the first time, like far away from my family. Like it was very stressful, but I was like, take it one day at a time, and we'll get through this eventually. And a couple months later, I'm getting out of it. Yeah.
I'm just gonna jump in here and say that I think one way of helping with an art block is finding something new to draw. Because I'm kind of in a weird place. I kind of am in between the two of you in that I have those cycles where like, oh, I can't really do anything. I can do stuff, and then I just like suddenly feel like I can't do anything at all. And usually in those places, like there was a time not too long ago when I was kind of feeling like I was starting to slip into that slump, because I'm like, I don't feel like doing anything. I'm not doing anything really new or crazy. I'm just trying to catch up on all my pages I lost, and I wasn't feeling it. And what I ended up doing was, I can't even remember what really started it. I think, actually now I remember, I had a desktop image of this really beautiful like sunset dock over a lake. And I'm like, that's really pretty. That has really nice colors. You know, I'm going to try recreating that just for kicks. And then I started looking at other pictures. I'm like, oh, I want to draw that. I want to draw that. And then I started making all these like miniature landscape scenery pictures. And that was just me like trying to find a new outlet, a new thing to draw other than just my comic, what I need to draw, and a lot of prep work. And it was just something fun. And I could just go crazy with it. And I think what people need to do sometimes is maybe find something new to draw. If you're having an art block, it's usually because you are feeling, I think, at least unsatisfied in some regard. Or like what you said, Amber, you're just not helping with all the faculties on the inside, mentally and physically. And I think sometimes this kind of, I think, applies to the mental, and that you're not stimulating your brain enough. And maybe there's just not enough cool activity going on up there, so maybe you just need to do something fun every now and then. Doesn't even have to be art, just something else.
Yeah, if you're doing art as like your full-time gig, you should not like, don't be afraid to experiment with other types of art. Heck, like if you're like a purely digital artist, maybe grab a sketchbook and try drawing traditionally or something. But also, maybe get a hobby. If art is no longer your hobby, you should get a new hobby so that you don't go crazy. Whether it's like playing video games, reading books, knitting, like anything.
Yeah.
Make like dabbling in making music, like whatever. Like just find something else to like that's just satisfying and fun for you to do, and you are not expecting much out of yourself from it except having fun and relaxing.
Yeah. Let's see here. What else do we have on this list? This big list. Well, okay. This is a long question, so stick with me here, you guys. This is from @McSpoofy. When you are getting impatient because you really want to get to a specific part of your webcomic, but you still have to build up some setup for that part, how do you pace yourself so that you don't ignore important story bits that make that specific part more exciting and not so out of left field? Also, what's a good way to make sure your art quality is consistent? I think this is something that a lot of webcomic artists actually are a bit scared of. And I know we touched on the specific parts and like wanting to get to those like little check marks in the story before, but maybe we can elaborate.
Well, first off, art quality being consistent is a joke in webcomics.
That's what we call a myth, I think.
That's not real. If you are reading a webcomic and the art seems to be pretty consistently good throughout it, they have probably been drawing for a lot longer than you have. Or they're stagnant. Like, your art changing is not bad. It's not a bad thing. It doesn't need to be the same quality as it goes. Honestly, that's one of my favorite things with reading big backlogs of webcomics is seeing the art get better.
Yeah.
It's really inspiring to me. I love really long webcomics where you're like, look at how far they've come. Oh, they know how to actually draw backgrounds now. Oh, look at the shading and their line work. It's so good. Like, it's so like, don't trip yourself up on trying to keep consistent, because honestly, if your art stays the same from when you started to the end of your comic, that might not be a good thing. You should allow yourself to change your style as you learn new things, and as you like learn better techniques and get better. It's okay for it to change.
As far as like a consistency goes, I saw a post, I think on Tumblr probably, that was like tips to make your characters more consistent. It's like, do a turnaround, do like, you know, draw them facing forward, draw them facing backwards. And that's, I think it's nice to have a ref sheet and all. The only thing in my experience that has ever made my characters more consistent is drawing those characters 1 million times. And that's it. It's like, if you read my comic Paradise, the last chapter was almost entirely 2 characters, and those characters look a lot more consistent now because I drew only them for like nearly 40 pages, and that's how that works. Is you draw the thing a whole bunch for a long period of time, and it becomes muscle memory how you draw it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We kind of like skipped over the first bit of this question a little bit.
I just was like zoomed in on that last part. I was like, that's wrong.
But when you are getting impatient because you want to get to a specific part of your webcomic and you have to build up to that part, how do you pace yourself so you don't ignore your story bits? And I actually have a lot of thoughts on this in regards to writing. I think there's a lot of you guys have probably also experienced this. When you're in the beginning of your webcomic, you're like, this is the boring part that I have to get through to get to the cool part. And I think part of that is because it's more than likely your first kind of like story you're trying to polish up for people. I have like other comics on the back burner where I'm like, all of this is exciting in one way or another kind of deal. And it's because I have this experience of having written and kind of put this other story out, and I think that's really more of a writing thing than anything else. Is just, again, also tying in with your consistency bit. If you flex a muscle enough, you know, you gotta put it into practice.
I think that if you're getting impatient and like you do want to get to a specific part, I mean, one, that's good because you're excited to keep working and you're like, use that as like your goal. Like be like, okay, I do need to spend this chapter explaining this like background information or introducing this character so people get attached to them, and so that like this other character development thing, like whatever it is, like use that as your motivation to keep going with the like kind of grind, because it'll be worth it in the end. Like, if you're wanting to make the best story that you can, then that's like, just have that be the goal. Like, I just want that to be as impactful as I can make it. So I'm going to spend the hours drawing these extra pages and paying attention to my details and stuff.
Yeah, and I think we kind of touched on this in the last episode, I believe, just a tiny bit. But when scripting and outlining, I think you mostly mentioned this, Amber, but we don't kind of work out everything, right? We just like the plot points usually, and then we kind of start to detail it out as we get closer to that. That might help, because if there's one thing I've kind of picked up on is that as you're writing like the full chapter out, it's like the more you're like, oh, man, I really want to work on this because there's like a lot of neat stuff in here that I didn't work out until I started writing it a bit more. And then if you get too far ahead, you're like, man, I want to work on like chapter 5, but I'm on chapter 2. So maybe like rein it back a little bit and just work on what you're going to be working on, and then work a little bit on the next chapter ahead. Just so then it's like you're not too far ahead and you're like, oh, I really want to work on this thing way over there instead of right here.
And like the part of this question, the how do you pace yourself so you don't ignore the like setup. For me personally, with my comic Backlash, I'm still in the setup stage of my comic. But we're right on the edge of like getting to the like story. Like, and people are probably like, "What? But you're on chapter 4. What do you mean?" I'm like,
"Been
"Yeah,
doing
that
this
was
for
a
2
lot
years.
That was a lot of setup, and I had to pace myself with it." What makes it more fun for me, like, is that I do hang a lot of like plot threads, or I introduce characters and then like they don't do anything, or like I have people say something, or like just kind of drop information that I know what it means and I know the significance of it, but like people reading it with no context are like, "Ooh, that's interesting. What does that mean?" And I'm like, waggles my fingers, you'll see. And it like keeps people interested and they have questions, and I'm like, this is going to be a fun plot thread to follow as I get like, this is going to lead to this part of the story. And like, it's just, I really like to just, and that comes from, I know the big important details for later on in the story. And so if you know what you're building towards, you can make the setup more fun by laying out a lot of different things and like, you know, accommodating it accordingly.
Yeah, and setting it up so that later when the big things happen, it's like all of a sudden a whole bunch of puzzle pieces fall into place for your readers, and it's just like
real satisfying.
Yeah, then you get to see people go through the backlog and say like, "Oh, they were hinting at it the whole time. It was like staring me in the face." All those sort of things, and that's also really satisfying to see, I think, from a writing perspective.
It's all about the long game. It's all about the long game.
Webcomics is literally all about the long game. Oh man.
I see you've solved my story, by the way.
The puzzles that I laid out specifically for you, my readers.
Oh, twirl my mustache.
You solved my long-form narrative riddle.
You're just basically a wacky villain as a webcomic artist.
Lay out the traps.
Pretty much, yeah.
Traps like character development and plot devices.
Whoa.
Gasp.
I think we're starting to run like maybe a smidge long. You guys want to like maybe like a lightning round these last couple of questions?
Lightning round.
Lightning round, yeah. From at Rowdy Jester. From at Rowdy Jester. Does listening to a song motivate you? Something you may associate with your comic, especially when you need motivation to draw it all. And I know the answer to this question. Yeah. That'd be yes.
Yeah. That is a yes.
Yes.
I'm
pretty sure we all have playlists.
Like big, everybody's got
multiple playlists.
Make playlists for your characters and your story. It will help.
And music can also be super inspiring. If you were maybe following me maybe late 2015 and kind of saw one of my more developed side stories kind of like pop up and disappear called Gunshot, that straight up like wouldn't have existed if I wasn't listening to like Whole Horse mixes on 8 tracks and was just like, I feel like drawing cowboys. And like that's it. That's all it takes sometimes. So yeah, no, for sure. I've also had like songs be like listening to songs and obviously like not taking things out of the songs like note for note, but like suddenly realizing like how a plot fits together because you happen to be listening to a song is like super satisfying.
I have the conflict for my story because of a song, like 100%.
And also, you end up getting a fucking soundtrack for that moment later in your comic. You know what plays there.
Music is good.
Hey.
Use that to your advantage.
Hey guys.
Hmm.
Can I let you in on a secret?
What's that?
Firearms Western thing all started because I listened to one song and it just blew up my mind with ideas, and I was like, okay, this is gonna be a Western sci-fi adventure now. That's what's happening because of one song. So songs are very important.
You have to tell us
Songs
what
are
the song
important.
is now.
Yeah, what was the song? Or is that spoilers?
Is it spoilers?
No. It was it was Hero by the Pegboard Nerds featuring Eliza Vetta.
I love that song.
And it was a Monster Cat. It was on one of the Monster Cat albums, I believe. Yeah.
I love that.
I'm gonna have to listen to this song after this
that's
recording.
I think I have that song on Alias's playlist also.
That's the other beautiful thing about songs is that it can mean different things to different people. This song that inspired Jeff's whole sci-fi western is also on your, man, I don't even know how to genre classify Backlash, is also on a mix for one of your major characters, and that's a beautiful thing.
Lightning round, what's the next one?
Yeah.
At Metaspace Cutie asks, is it wrong to not give yourself deadlines for your comics page when you start out? This question is mostly applied to those who may have trouble being consistent with a schedule and updating your comics. Kind of talked about that. I think that deadline, it's not wrong. There's no right way to do webcomics. You pick the schedule that works for you. Deadlines definitely will help you get them out.
Yeah.
And get art done. Like if you don't give yourself a deadline, you'll just work on it forever and never be satisfied with it. Sometimes you gotta just call it and be done.
Yeah. I think that's true. I think maybe like tying into the things we said at the beginning of the episode where like it's alright to miss updates and go on hiatuses. I think what you don't want to do is be like it's updating on Tuesday, and then it's updating on Thursdays and Wednesdays, and now it's going to update on a Sunday, and I think that's a really easy way to frustrate your following and like make it go away. Make them disappear because they never know when your comic is updating. I think that's a lot more damaging than just being like, hey, I gotta miss a couple updates because I got a wrist thing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, deadlines. Deadlines are always helpful, I think.
Deadlines will help you keep on track, especially if like this is something you're doing for free. Like it's not actually like your full-time job. It will help you get further in your story. But you know, if it doesn't work for you, then it doesn't work for you. You kind of have to pace yourself how you know yourself and how you work. So.
Right
If
on.
you feel like you're not gonna have it always ready, then I guess build up a buffer. That helps with everything. Sometimes.
Yeah.
All right. From Delta Nova _ for many people I know, it's hard to balance making a webcomic while doing work and/or school. What are some tips you have to help people make their webcomic when they have jobs or classes that take up a lot of their time?
Oh, Brent kind of talked about that earlier.
Yeah, and I think maybe like to put like a real advice-y kind of spin on that is know when to not. I think is if you're really like struggling, like just barely treading water, and you're like, I gotta do 2 pages a week, and I have this project for a class, and I have to do these things so I don't starve to death. You know when to be like, this is the thing that I do for fun and for free, and it's causing me more stress than enjoyment, and to just maybe let it go, or don't start your webcomic, or knock it back to like 1 page a week, or like 1 page every other week. If you really want to be consistently working on it, then like a reduced schedule is so helpful. I can't tell you the difference in stress it made to go back from 8 pages a month to 4 pages a month while I was in my senior year of at art school. But I think knowing when to not is the the thing there, I guess. If you really feel like you can't super balance it, then don't. It's a thing you're doing for free and for fun. It should be fun.
Yeah.
The thing should be fun.
And especially if you're at school, if you're going to school, there's kind of like a hierarchy, I think. Like if you're paying money to go to school, like that should be your focus, I think. Like that's more important than updating your webcomic every week.
You don't want to be like me, whose illustration teacher saw my webcomic pages and was like, "Why aren't you doing this for your projects?" She was like, "It really seems like you're putting a lot of time into these." I was like, "Oh yeah, no. Sure."
Like just make sure that like your priorities are where they should be. Like so with school, you should be focusing on school, and your webcomic should just be a fun side gig. Especially like if you are in school. Like I know webcomic artists who are in school and their update schedule isn't super consistent. They just are kind of like, "Hey guys, I'm in school right now. I'll update when I can." And their readers are like, "Okay, good luck in school. Get A's." You know?
Yeah, exactly.
People get it.
Yeah.
All right, from @BLU_blue_bat. How do you guys go about getting over that roadblock of crud? I don't know what happens in the next chapter, and
write out your plot.
Know what happens in the next chapter.
You should know what happens in the next chapter. You should know what you're building to.
Actually, here's some really good advice I did hear. I read actually from the author of the webcomic recommendation of the week that we'll get to at the end of the episode. But when you're at least starting your webcomic, make your like first chapter like kind of vague. Be like, and not like vague and like mysterious. Don't marry your like unless you're absolutely sure of what you want to go with. You want your first chapter to be like maybe just some character introductions and maybe a premise, but no, you don't want to be like laying down plot threads in that first chapter, especially if you don't know what's going to happen next, because say your first chapter is probably minimum like 20 to 50 pages. If you're updating even at 2 pages a week, that could be 6 months. If you're updating at a page a week, that could be like a year. And in that time, that's a lot of time to figure out what happens next. So yeah.
It's always good to know where your story is going to go before you start, also, so that you can always have something to build towards.
I think we'll have probably a topic on actually like writing, or like at least outlining and working out like a script. But for now, I would definitely say, at least in brief, work on an outline, work out your ending, work where you're working towards, and that should help at least give you an idea of where you're going to go next.
All right.
And our last question by @JugumPuppet. How does one get motivated to color their comic? I suck at coloring, but I desire to improve, yet see it as a chore. Help.
I can't relate. I'm sorry, I love coloring.
I hate coloring.
How do you get motivated to color then, Amber?
Well, I actually have a crisis every other month.
Oh my God.
Why don't I just do Backlash in black and white? Why don't I just do it in black and white? What's wrong with me? Why did I start coloring this thing? And I think this is probably not a very good answer, but I keep coloring it because it's already in color. If you don't like coloring, but you really want it to be in full color, and you're not very good at it, practice makes perfect. Like, just keep coloring it. Or maybe practice coloring on smaller illustrations first. Like, maybe just like, practice, try to find ways to do it as quickly as possible, like quick and painless. It doesn't need to be like fully painted backgrounds and stuff. Like, it can just be like easy. Just don't like if like for me, my main focus is always on like character acting and line art. when I'm doing my pages, because that's the most important thing to me. It's the most fun part for me. Everything else is just kind of like slapped on. So just like, don't beat yourself up if you don't like coloring but you want to do it, and just, it's I don't think there's any like easy way to get around it. You just have to keep doing it.
I mean, and there's no rules. If you don't like working in color, you don't have to work in color. I think the next step you take after that is like look at comics that are like black and white or limited palette and study what they're doing successfully, and like do that. Don't just do like, this is my line art but no color in it. Really study what makes black and white work strong and apply that to your own work. But you don't. There's no rules that are like, I'm sorry, this isn't a comic. It has no color.
This
you
is
can't.
not a webcomic.
Sorry, we have to turn you down.
We're the webcomic police. And plus, an add note to that: if it is in black and white, there's no reason you can't go color it again later.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
All right. Well, that's all our user-submitted questions.
Hell yeah, we
So-
knocked every single one of those out of the park for sure. All right, so for this week's webcomic recommendation, we're only going to give you one, and it's not going to be one we wrote, because now I'm assuming you've listened to the first episode, and now you've read all of our webcomics, and now you're all massive fans of all of ours. But here's a webcomic that maybe you haven't read. I'm gonna suggest for this week's webcomic recommendation you read Never Satisfied by Taylor Robin, aka Cornhime or Corny. It's a Hiveworks joint. It's about a bunch of multicolored teenagers trying to man, I should have actually looked up what the position they're vying for is. But it's about a bunch of teenagers kind of vying for like a court magician position in their little their kind of like city for the king. And basically the whole comic is kind of structured like a tournament arc, really, of a manga. But yeah, it's really good. I love it a lot. It's got some really beautiful colors and characters. And Jeff, I know you actually just binged this like a couple of days ago. Do you have any things you want to say about it?
Oh, I did. After you brought it up, I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I've been meaning to read that. And I binged it in like a day, actually. I was super excited once I read the first few chapters. And it's not very long. Actually, right now it's still in its starting position, I guess you would say.
It's in the middle of its third chapter.
Yeah. Well, no, actually, it's on its it's in its fourth, and I think it's actually getting close. Yeah, it's getting close to the end. I think. I feel like we're reaching chapter 5 territory very soon. It's first off, it's wonderfully paced. It is able to bring in all these different emotions and like character depth in just like these 4 chapters, and slowly world building it all, and it is very colorful. I love the colors, and my goodness, it gets very cute at one point. And I was reading it, and I was covering my face because I'm like, oh my god, this is giving me cavities, man. There's so much sugar, and it also tugs at your heartstrings a lot too. Like binging through that, I'm like, like it's like roping me in, and now I'm hooked. And if that's not selling, yeah, I don't know what will. Like, it's just it's a great comic.
I'm gonna go read that this week. I'm the only one who hasn't read the comic. I feel bad. I'm gonna have to go binge this.
No, we're making the case to you. Our co-host has not read the comic.
I haven't, and now I have been convinced. So I will do that.
So yeah, webcomic of the week. Go read Never Satisfied.
We will include a link in the description for you.
Yes.
So
that'd be
you
very
have
good.
to find it.
I think that's gonna do it for us this week. Really quick, I just want to say, thank you guys for the response on the first episode of the the podcast. It's actually, I don't know about you guys. I think I talked to Amber about this a little bit. It blew me away a little bit. We got such a really nice positive response from people on the first episode.
I can't believe it. I am floored and super flattered. Like, wow. Thank you for listening.
I mean, I was just like combing like through the Tumblr responses, the SoundCloud, the Twitter. Like everyone has just been like really positive and really just enjoying. I knew we would like it, right? Like we liked it. We all said like, yeah, this is great.
For a couple of goofs just doing something for fun. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks for listening. I hope you continue to enjoy what we have to say about comics. Yeah. Put a pin in that one. I've been Brent.
I've been Amber.
And I've been Jeff.
This has been Speech Bubbles, a webcomic podcast. We do this for free.
We do this for free. Play us out, Tommy.
A different guy, huh?
Yeah, we had to fire the last one. I mean,